So we have air. Air is not just gases, mixing in the atmosphere. There's a lot more to air than we can see. That's a little joke because you can't see the air, but at least not close up. You can see it over a great distance, I guess. You can see what's in the air. Air is, it's the medium in which waves travel. The sound of my voice goes to this microphone through the air. Then also, the signal from the radio station to the radio, it goes through the air. We think of air as a physical solid, not solid, I guess, but a physical thing with something akin to solidness. We can feel air as it blows against us, so it has some substance. It's a real thing. And in being a real thing, it interacts with other real things, which is how we're able to breathe it, get the oxygen that we need to be alive and continue to live. This comes through the air. But a radio signal comes through the air too. How does that work? Everything that travels must travel through something. It must be in something. If you go someplace walking, your medium of travel is the ground. You're walking along the ground. That's how you make the motion happen. If a radio signal comes from the radio station, what does it just magically appear everywhere? No, it needs to travel. And the medium it travels through, it needs to be able to interact with, so it must be similar to it. We have a solid body, we have feet, we walk upon the ground, and we move across the surface. That is our relation to the ground. We're solid, it's solid, and therefore, by pushing against its solidity, our smaller mass of body moves. The ground, we don't imagine that the ground moves under our feet and that we stay in one spot and the world moves underneath us as we walk to the destination we're going to. That doesn't seem to be the case because two people can be walking towards each other and obviously the ground's not moving in opposite directions at the same time. So the small thing with smaller mass is the one that moves. So we got our radio wave coming off of the antenna, and then it travels through the metal of the antenna structure with a lot of energy behind it. So much energy that when it reaches the end of the metal, the energy continues. It jumps right off from the solid substance of metal into the substance of air. And it vibrates the air. Now, the vibration is of very high or low frequency when it comes to electricity. We don't sense it because it's at such high frequency it can't be physically felt. But nonetheless, we know it's there because we turn on the radio and we hear the radio station. So there is a radio signal. And it's traveling right through the air and through our body to the radio without any problem. It's making it through its medium. So the radio wave and the air must have something in common, just like our feet and the ground have something in common. They're both solid substances. They're both real physical things. So of the same nature. That's how we walk across the ground. So that tells me the electromagnetic, I should say, radio wave, the radio signal from the station, is able to travel through the air. It must have some similarity with the air. It's not solid in a physical way. We can't grab a hold of the radio wave and see it and wrestle it around and hold it in our hand. That's not possible. because it's just not. It's a different substance. But we can't hold the air in our hands and wrestle it around either. And we can make a fan and blow the air and feel that something in the air is moving. But as far as holding it, you can't really hold it, just like you can't hold a radio wave. So in those two ways, the radio wave and the air have something in common. They both seem, the air must have an electrical property to it, because the radio wave does not have a solid physical property to it, yet it's able to move through air. So it must be that the air has a property similar to the radio wave. It's electric, and we know that that's true too, because we see lightning sometimes when the conditions are correct. And there's static electricity, which will build up upon the real solid things, and zap us when we touch something. You get zapped. It's static electricity that's in the air. But is the static electricity, is it the air? Is the air a static electricity? What is the oxygen when we breathe it in? Is it a solid thing? I mean, we can purify oxygen and put it in a bottle, so it must have a physical substance of its own, even though it's invisible. It can be measured and it can be concentrated, I guess. So it has a physical component to it, which is necessary for survival, because we're physical solid things, and in order to interact with something, it must be of the same nature. So the physical air can go into our physical body, into our bloodstream, and keep us alive. The radio wave travels through the air, but how? It's a vibration. It radiates out. Does the wave actually even move? That's another one we should really probably take into account. We think of things as moving because from our perspective, they seem to move. We know the radio station is 10 miles away. It's broadcasting a signal, and we can pick it up here. So we're assuming that radio wave has traveled to our radio. But has it? I mean, in standard thought, it has, but in terms of vibration, the wave is energy, is a vibration. So the radio station isn't sending out a radio wave, a signal that goes from its starting point to its end point, and then a new section is added to it. It's the energy itself. The amount of power the station has determines the range that its signal will go to. When its signal begins, it vibrates the air. The air is the medium that the electrical signal travels through. But does the electrical signal travel, or does it just vibrate the air, which is then converted into the frequencies which are being sent out from the radio? Which is, does the air just vibrate, and our radio picks up the air vibration, the electrical property of the air, and turns that into an understandable sound? Because it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Does the radio signal really electrically travel to our radio, or does it just emit into the air, and the nature of its energy causes a vibration in the air? The air takes on the qualities of that electrical signal, in which case, as long as you're within the range of the station's power, your air can be turned into the sound that the radio station is sending out. And lots of these can be at the same time, so air can actually handle a lot of electrical signals at the same time. I'm going to have to pause on that one because I'm losing my point. Okay, this is going to be an attempt to define my emerging concept of cosmology. Because you know, everything is connected somehow. There's a relationship between things, you know. Otherwise, we would not be able to perceive them. So one cosmology states that the earth was a creation and we are put on that creation. It doesn't try to explain the workings of the creation. It just puts out there that it exists, and it is. And here's what we see. Science puts forth the idea that, you know, we're on a spinning ball in the vacuum of space. And how did that come into being? Well, a Big Bang. Well, there's a whole lot of problems with that. I mean, first and foremost, it doesn't answer anything. Where'd the Big Bang come from? Who made the Big Bang? God? Oh, well, see, there's no such thing as God. It's all mechanical processes of nature, and electrical and physical and pneumatic and whatever. All the processes of the physical world. That's all there is, and so they can't say that, oh, well, there's a God that made the Big Bang happen, and then the universe came into being, and it was all part of that plan. But then there's, you know, you try and follow their logic, and their logic falls apart too. And, you know, they teach us that it doesn't fall apart. They teach us lower sections of their logic that seem to be viable, and we believe it to be true, and therefore we lend credence to their bigger concept of how things came into being, but there's no proof of that. And the very fact that their construct starts to fail at a certain point, logically, shows that they don't have the answer. I don't know that the answer can even be got in a physical form. We won't know until we're non-physical, which may or may not be when we die. But we don't really die. I mean, who knows? Maybe we do. I'm not telling you I know this for a fact, but I do believe in the conservation of energy. It can only be changed from one form to another. And so we change from one form to another, but the energy that constitutes us, our mind, where our thoughts come from, is energy. That, you know, and energy can't be destroyed, only altered. What we might alter into, we don't know. But in my idea, energy is conserved in that way. We've measured the energy fields around things. We know they exist. There's magnetic fields and there's static electric fields and such. Any 2 points in space, and when I say space, I don't mean outer space. Like, that's not even a thing yet. I just mean an area with a distance between them. 2 points in space. Between your feet, there is space. Right. So there's an electrical charge that exists at a certain rate between any 2 points in space, even if there's nothing there. Just you take your lead, the leads from your test meter, and toss one to your left and toss one to your right, and they land. Let's say they land on the table. They're not touching anything, no metal parts, just up in the air, and you'll get a reading. There is an energy there. You touch something and that energy is different. You touch another thing with the other lead and that energy changes. You move them in any way and the energy potential changes. So between any 2 points in space, there is always an energy potential. And depending on what matter and physical things constitute taking up that space, that changes its electrical properties. Physical things actually contain more electrical energy than empty space, but empty space contains energy also. You know, so we've measured structures that are electrical in nature. Our aura is one. There's an energy field around our body. Everything physical has an electrical and magnetic quality to it. that with the right measurement equipment can be measured. So everything has an aura, an electrical field, and they follow consistent patterns in a way. I mean, you don't have the electrical field is not measured in a straight line that goes up vertically from the ground, but not horizontally. It emanates in all directions, but the shape of the object, its density, its mass, what it's made out of, determines areas of the field where the strength begins its travel outward from the physical body with different energy levels. So that will affect the shape of the field. The energy, like a radio signal, can only travel as far as its energy allows it to. There's that to consider. I think the shape is what has been identified. I mean, is a torus shape. It's a toroid. A rotating, all energy moves in spirals. And that's evident in a lot of ways as well. And how a tree grows or a plant grows, it spirals. How a hurricane spirals. There's a lot of energy and it turns. They say that electricity in wires doesn't even go through the wire. It travels as a non-physical thing around the wire in a rotation. And I have no reason to doubt that. So if that's the nature of energy travel, it spins. And that's in line with the toroid. The toroid has a rotation. And I don't know, I'm losing my point again. A dual torus seems to be a possible structure or shape that can define cosmology for us. Because by all observations, the place we live is, there's ups and downs on it, but overall it is a level surface. There's no curvature to be seen. The only curvature that exists is in fake photography by outer space liars, by the powers of this world, the governments, and the schools, and those who would suppose to tell us what is real and what is true. We're supposed to believe them. And they make a good case for many of the things, but some of the things they just don't have any case for, but they insist that they're correct and that we continue to believe them. There is no such thing as matter solid. Everything is made of energy. We exist within a field, let's say, of energy. What we perceive as a three-dimensional space, of which contains energy of many kinds. Electrical and magnetic are the invisible forms that we've discovered. We didn't know was there until we found more sophisticated ways of measuring and what we could see. We could see something, but we didn't know what its nature was. But I'm postulating there is no such thing as solid matter. And this is in line with Tesla when he says if you want to understand the world or the universe, think in terms of waves and frequency. And that's actually fairly easy to do, at least in these modern times with our understanding of waves and waveforms, and how rapid succession of something that seems, without substance or very little substance becomes substantive, uh, you know, like a fan. The fan blades spin so fast that you can't make them out anymore. There's just a blur. You can see through what's on the other side. If you stick your hand in there, you'll know there's a blade there, though it'll hit you. But if the blade was spinning fast enough, you wouldn't be able to put your hand through the area where the blade was. It would be solidly, if there is such a thing, solidly from our perception, blocking you from putting your hand through it. It would feel like you were pushing against a wall that wouldn't give, because it's spinning so fast that it's more frequently blocking than there's a gap. And that's how it all works, really. A rock is not a solid thing. It is a very, well, I guess it would be a high-speed frequency of energy. We tend to think of them as in low. Low frequency is solid and heavy, and we think that, matter is energy condensed and slowed until it becomes a solid. But that might be backwards. It seems counterintuitive, but in the idea of the fan, the faster it goes, the more solid its area becomes. If it was turning real slow, you could put your hand through that area and pull it back out before the fan hit you, and you would be violating its space, but not really, because it's not there at the time. So it takes that high frequency to make something have the attributes of something solid. So maybe it's the high frequency things that are solid. Maybe a piece of steel is strong and solid because the energy that forms it and gives it, form and substance is at a very high frequency. So high a frequency that we can't travel in between its waves and troughs, its crests and troughs of the wave, and therefore it seems solid to us. And the electrical energy and the magnetic energy that doesn't have a substance we can see is actually the lower frequency energy. It's such a low frequency that it can't even form a solid body of substance, so it's lower. I think there's something to that. So things with higher frequency and more solidity, more substance to them, can travel right through those lower frequency things. That's why we can walk through the air, and we can, radio waves go around us. I guess they go through us some too, but that's slightly different. Yeah, that was my first thought on there. I believe the world to be a dual torus. It seems to fit in a model, and this is just a model. If you make a model of of what we can see from Earth, I don't believe we've punctured the dome into, quote, outer space, and there's a vacuum there, and there's a sun far away, and planets and stuff moving around as physical bodies. That's some horseshit. That cannot be proven. I shouldn't say it's horseshit. It could be, but it hasn't been proven because we haven't gone there, and if they say that we have, they're lying. And so, we don't need to believe the liars. The liars could be right, but they have not proven their case. So until they prove their case, they're just speculating. And for them to firmly say that this is true in fact, that's when it becomes a lie. Speculation is just speculation until you insist that it is correct and that other people believe it to be correct, and then you are a liar because you've proven nothing. You've just made a speculation and you're trying to enforce it on everybody's mind. The dual torus, though. The dual torus is a structure as an upper dome and a lower dome, and their energy, the energy of the dual torus is rotating clockwise in one, counterclockwise the other, and radiating out from the center line between the two. There's a point in the middle between the two where a plane is made, a circular plane, because the energy travels in circles and it rotates. It radiates out from that center magnetically along the plane. That's the magnetic plane of inertia. And as far as it goes is determined by the initial energy, I guess, the amount of power it has. You might say the magnetic wave travels outward along the plane, and at a certain point it splits. Half of its waveform goes down, and the other half goes up and begins to curve back towards the center, creating a dome, like a bubble, a dome above, a dome below. And in the center between those two hemispheres is the plane of inertia, the magnetic plane. The electrical component is vertical. Electricity goes, as energy, travels in a circular path, but its domain is vertical. Electricity moves up and down. And that is, relative to the plane of inertia. That's how we can have up and down. Now, the plane of inertia is a plane, it's level, and that's where we are. That's where the ground is. Below us is the ground, and that is also, in electrical sense, that's negative, the negative charge, the electrons, as they say. Electrons, when you think of energy as having some solid form, because we're solid things, we need to speak and think in terms of solid things to describe things. It doesn't mean they are necessarily that solid form, but that's how we can think about them. So the electron is the negative charge, and it's the substance of the energy. The voltage is directly related to the electron. In a battery, DC, the electron flow is from the negative terminal to the positive terminal. When we're first learning about electricity, the tendency is to think that the positive means, pressure. It's positive, so it's pressurized, and so we think that the high pressure is going to move its way to the low pressure. And so it's common to assume that it goes from electricity travels in a battery from the positive to the negative. But we've discovered that it actually, when you connect the battery, the flow initially is from the negative to the positive, and this is called the electron flow, and it's directly related to voltage. However high the voltage is indicates more electrons, higher electron flow. However, everything having an equal and opposite balance, the current, which is what actually does the work in an electrical circuit, travels from positive to negative and 90 degrees out of phase with the electron flow. So what's this mean to the dual torus cosmology? Well, electrons are what makes up substance. We can say that a material substance, using those words again, it may not truly be a material substance, it's just energy states, but for sake of conversation, we'll talk about it like it's a substance. And that's the electrons. They make up the solidity of matter, and therefore they concentrate and have a larger, I don't know what you'd call it, weight. They gain mass. The spaces in between the charge points that are held together that create mass, or that are made of, the mass is made of, creates the mass. I don't know how to describe it better than that, but electrons, we'll talk about it like it's a substance. And that's the electrons. They make up the solidity of matter, and therefore they concentrate and have a larger, I don't know what you'd call it, weight. They gain mass. The spaces in between the charge points that are held together that create mass, or that are made of, the mass is made of, creates the mass. I don't know how to describe it better than that, but electrons make up the substance, and that's why they are the ground. That's why the ground, being where heavy things are and density is below our feet, because it's the electron component. And the current would be 90 degrees opposite. It would come from above us, the top of the dome. That's where the charge separation is. On the plane of inertia, there is no charge separation. The charge separation begins as soon as you leave contact with the ground. So, being solidly affixed on the ground plane, we have both charges. However, energy doesn't sit stagnant, it moves. It's always moving, it's always turning. So the magnetic wave radiates outward and then becomes the electrical component at the limit of its energy and is drawn up. Positive charge goes to the top, negative charge goes downward and comes up from the bottom. The negative charge is the electron carrier, and so the electrons build up on the lower surface, which is why the ground is below our feet. The positive charge, being of current, has no relative substance to it. It's pure energy, and it moves upward for the charge separation. At the very top of the dual torus is the most positive charge, and at the very bottom of it is the most negative charge. And the center is where, they meet, where we live. We're at the center line.